Right, good day learners. A very common adjustment that does occur in many of your tasks is where you've got to find an unknown figure. And this is often associated around rent, but not always specifically. So I've taken two examples out of your study guide, question 19 and question 21, both to do with rent income, just to demonstrate and illustrate to you how you find this unknown figure. Now this first one comes out of question 21. They tell you that the rent for March was received and deposited. Take into account that the rent was increased by 875 Rand from the 1st of December. And they give you figures from the trial balance that ends on the 28th of February 20.7. So that tells me the end of the financial year. So I'm working with a financial year 1st of March 2016 to the 28th of February 2017. And I'm told in the trial balance that I received rent of 117,250. But now, the rent has actually been received for March. Now, March is beyond our financial year, which means in actual fact then that I have actually received 13 months' rent. So that figure of 117,250 is 13 months' rent. In my financial statements, I only want this year's rent. So I'm going to have to adjust this to get the extra month's rent because it belongs in the next financial year. Remember, I'm applying matching. The rent for March is actually in the next financial year. Now, the complication is that you can't just go and divide by 13 because the rent actually increased. So let's look on this timeline. If we go here, on the 1st of December, the rent actually increased. So that means that these 9 months over here, the rent was a certain amount, and I'm going to say it was X at that stage. Then for the next 3 months, December, January, February, plus the extra one, which is 4 months, this rent was still the original X, but it increased by 875 Rand. So now we need to make a math sum out of that in order to solve for this. So you've got 9x plus 4x plus 875. Remember, there are 13 months in this, is equal to 117,250. And now, using your math skills, you have to solve for x. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this. For 9 months, the rent was x. 4 months, it was x plus 875, so I've done a math sum and I've solved for x, and I've got x equal to 8750. Freeze the frame now if you're not sure about this calculation and just go through the math sum. Now, at the end of the day, what am I trying to work out though? I'm trying to get March's rent because that's the next year. Now, March's rent is after the increase. So, in order to get March's rent, it's going to be x plus 875. Which, if we add on to this, comes to 9625. So, in effect, 9,625 of this rent is actually next year's. So, applying your matching, you'll have to minus it away in the income statement, and in your balance sheet, under trade and other payables, you'll have to put out income received in advance or deferred income. Now, in question 19, we had a very similar adjustment, but this time the rent has been paid for March and April, and our financial year ends on the 28th of February. So again, there's my financial year, but in this case 2 extra months have been paid. So in effect 14 months have been paid. 2 months of that will be in advance. And again, we are told that those 14 months bought in an amount of 43,200. There it is. Now, the rent increased by 10% on the 1st of January. Now, in the previous one, they gave you an amount, which is often easier to work out. So how do we work it when we've got a percentages? So what I'm going to say is in this period of time here, these 10 months now, from the 1st of March to the 1st of January, the rent was 100 X's. Now, I gave you a lesson somewhere earlier, and I said to you, in accountancy, we always start at 100. So in this case, the old rent was 100, and let's make it 100 x's. The next 2 months' rent there, plus the extra 2 months, which is 4 months, this rent has gone up by 10%. So now it's equal to 110 x's. So again, let's build up a mass sum. So it's 10 times 100 x's plus, and it's going to be 4 months. Remember that we've actually got 2 months extra, times 110 x's, and that equals 43,200. Now again, use your maths and solve for x. Right, now hopefully you are able to solve that for x. So we've got 1,000 x's plus 440 x's. Divide this figure by the 1,440, and we've got x is equal to 30. But remember, that's only the starting. That's what x is. Your rent now for March and April, 2 months rent. So you've got 2 months, and the rent at that stage was 110 x's. So we know that x is equal to 30 times 110, which is 3,300. But they're 2 months, March and April, so times 2, and so your rent is 6,600. Again, that will have to be minus from your rent figure in your income statement and added on to income received in advance or deferred income in your trade and other payables. Now, I've used rent as the example here, but it could be any expense or any income figure where you have to solve for an unknown. And there's really only the 2 ways that we use, either give you an amount or actually give you a percentage. So when you get to these questions in your study guide, if you're not sure, come back to this until such time as you're quite comfortable with solving this math sum.